Fine. So, so we'll start with the configuring the components related to ledger first. Okay. So what are the ledger components? Calendar, chart of account structure, currency, and accounting method, right? So we'll try to focus on these things first, and then we'll come back to the rest of the components, right? So what is the very first one in this list is your calendar, right? And then your currency, right? And then what you have? Your chart of account structure instance, but for which you need some dependent setups to be completed prior to that. So what is the least lowest setup task that you need to perform is the value set, right? So we'll try to cover the value sets as well. Right? So let's first check what is calendar, right? What is calendar and how you navigate in the application to create one of the calendar, right? So calendar, what is the major purpose of calendar having defined in the application? So from our yesterday's discussion, anyone? No answer. Okay. So basically the calendar purpose, having calendar purpose is defined is to facilitate the transaction date, right? So every business transaction is going to be represented along with a date on which the transaction gets booked, right? To facilitate that transaction date component, the corresponding component what you have is calendar. Okay, so again, this calendar is splitted into a multiple subcomponents. So calendar is basically, see, basically calendar is to facilitate the date of a transaction that is going to be recorded in the application. Okay, so again, the calendar can be further subsplitted into multiple pieces. Maybe it further can be segregated into multiple parts of a financial year, right? If you take as an example for financial year Jan to December, this is if this is your financial year, right? Each month and each quarter, right? Each week are going to be subset of your financial year, right? That's financial year we are calling as calendar. The financial year is going to be defined as part of your calendar in the application, right? So, so here the major purpose of it is to get identify the transaction within specific date. That is fine, right? So how does a calendar can we have different calendars in the business? Yes, because different countries has different the financial years, right? So for example, if you see the US, maybe it is following Jan to December, whereas in India its financial year is April to March, right? So in this in this financial year, again the financials are going to be recorded for each of the subset of this financial year, maybe monthly, right? Maybe weekly, maybe quarterly, depends upon the how the company wants to report its transactions, how the company wants it to record and report its transactions. Okay, so let's see how you configure the accounting calendar, and we'll discuss what are the touch points that we see on the accounting calendar creation form, right? So what is the navigation to do your calendar setup is manage accounting calendar. Maybe please take out this note. These are navigations you call, right? So where do you do this setup? This is a setup task. Where do you do in the application, right? So hope every one of you created your username along with your implementation project, right? So the setup tasks are going to be done from the FSM, functional setup manager. Functional setup manager is going to be enabled when you assign the role called application implementation consultant, right? So once that is done, you will be able to see the FSM related tasks enabled for the user. So for my user, I have logged in. I'm trying to log in from the user icon, right? Here, setup and maintenance I can see, right? So from here, we discussed there are various offerings, financials, the HCMs, SCM, procurement, rest all, right? So based on this, each of these offering has its own functional areas, and further its functional area will have its subtask, right? So the configuration can be done from here, or else you can even do the configurations from the implementation project that you have created, right? So how do you go into implementation project? From task panel, go to my implementation project and find your implementation project. We have seen, we have already discussed how you find your implementation project. How do you create your implementation project? What are the other actions that you can do, right? So iCore Financial is the one of the implementation project which I created, right? So based on the offerings that I have selected, right, it lists out all the tasks under my implementation project. Now, so I want to do my calendar setup from my implementation project. So I've navigated to the implementation project. Now I need to navigate to the corresponding task, which allows me to do the configuration, right? So how do I do that is you can search in the search panel, right? If not, you can expand this bullet button. It gives you the all the related setups that the financial offering has. Okay, so once if you expand this, there are number of uh, subtasks got enabled, and each of these subtasks has its tasks listed under each of these subtasks, right? So maybe you can directly search in the search panel. So majority of the tasks, whatever you see, majority of the tasks are going to start with the string called manage. Okay, so application is designed to, it can even be searched with the partial search as well. You don't need to be punching the exact task name in this search panel. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm searching with the manage calendar, just calendar, not an accounting calendar. I know this task name is manage accounting calendar, but let me search with the manage accounting calendar. I can even search with the partial search as well. But make sure that you give the percentage symbol. Right? Just click on this search button. It lists out all the tasks which falls under this search criteria. Okay, so if you see manage calendar, these are the list subtasks that are being displayed. So find out your task, manage accounting calendar. Maybe you can find, or else you can even add the complete what do you call a search criteria, just to further shortlist the calendar task, right? So can you see anywhere here manage accounting calendar, very first one, right? There are certain other tasks with this search criteria. There are other calendars as well. So the payables has its own calendar, budgets has its own calendar, right? Assets has its own calendar. We'll discuss that when we reach out to that level. Okay. So let me go into the manage accounting calendar. Click on that manage accounting calendar. Then it took me to the manage accounting calendar task by highlighting that task name. So it even given me the what is the parent such a parent task of this manage accounting calendar. Define calendars is the calendar subtask that the manage accounting calendar is part of, right? If you click on this the button which is towards the left corner, it shows this define calendar is part of which subset, which subtask, right? If you put the cursor also, it has given me. See, financials is the offering, define common applications configuration for financial, under which define enterprise structure for financials is the first level subtask, under which define financial reporting is the second level, under which define calendar is the third level, and fourth level is the granular level task that we are going to configure. Okay. So once you find out your task name, how do I navigate to the corresponding task? We discussed right in the implementation project. Just click on the go to task. So before that, you have an option help icon enable. So which is got enabled from your user menu, right? So once you enable show help icon or hide help icon, if you enable the show help icon, it gives you this option, so that it gives you the once you click here, it gives you the this task related information in a crisp way. So at initial stage, at least I would recommend all of you to go through this task. So it gives you some theoretical knowledge. I mean, what exactly is the purpose of this calendar, right? And what are the major concepts around this the task called calendar? Okay. So to define the accounting calendar, I'm going to click on the go to task so that it should open me the accounting calendar definition area where I can see the calendars on the application. So here, as in when I click on the go to task, I could see there are multiple calendars displayed on the page. So these are all the calendars which are created by the users. Since this is a demo instance, people will be using for practice purpose or maybe for POCs, whatever, right? That is the reason you would be seeing number of calendars created. Okay, these are the calendars which are already available in the application by created various test users, maybe the users like us, right? People who uses this application for practice purpose, they also create the calendar. Once you create a calendar, that comes as an one of the calendar in this list, right? How do you search for an existing calendar? If you know the name of the calendar, what you have created, maybe you can just search here, right? If you search, then the relevant calendar will be pulled out from this list and displayed in front of you, right? So what is our objective? We are supposed to create a calendar, right? How do I do that? So simply click on the plus symbol. It is to create your calendar. Okay. Okay. So this is the calendar creation page area where you would need to punch in some of the attributes so that the calendar can be created by the application. If not, if not, then the as a user you need to punch in the required information for a calendar to be able to get it created, right? So here it is giving a message, enter a start date that's full year before start date of the year of the first transaction period for your ledger. Translation can't be run in the first defined period of your ledger's calendar. So it is giving some message. There is a limitation from the application. saying that there is a concept called translation we will discuss in detail, but it cannot be run in the first period of your calendar. Where do you define your first period is your start date. What the application is giving is just an popping up a message saying that just try to define calendar to a backward period so that the translation feature in the application can be used. Otherwise, you cannot use that feature in the first period. That is what it is basically a, maybe we can classify as a limitation from the application, right? So that we will be notified about that limitation from the application so that you can consider that point and make the necessary changes or considerations before you are defining your calendar, right? So give the name of the calendar, right? iCore accounting calendar or iCore monthly calendar. I'm going to define, right? There is a limitation on the name of the calendar name. Okay, so there are certain strings limitation. So please try to use with the limitation, try to use some meaningful name for your calendar, right? Still it is not, right? So due to that, you can, with that limitation, you can give a meaningful description, right? Monthly calendar for iCore PS operations, right? So the start date. Start date is the beginning, the first date of your calendar, right? So what is this? What there is already there is a pop-up from the application. The start date should be your calendar should be start at least one period prior to that. But in general, the start date will not be your implementation start date. Let's say you will be working on the implementation, right? What we discussed in the implementation phases. There would be certain phases that you will be working, right? Right from the gathering the requirement to your CRPs and then your SITs and UATs. Once that sign off is done, then you will be going live on the application from which the application is going to be used by the business to record the business transaction. But is that the implementation date is going to be my start date of my calendar? Ideally, it is not the case, right? You will be defining your calendar prior to your implementation date for certain number of periods, depends upon the business, depends upon the agreement with the business. Why do you create a prior date calendar before your implementation date? Because as part of your implementation, so you would need to bring the historical data as part of your data conversions. Maybe your GL balances, maybe your supplier open invoices, maybe your customer open invoices, right? Those transactions should have its own date, right? So depends upon the agreement, how many periods of historical data that you are gonna bring for that customer, right? The first date of that your calendar should fall under that range that you agree with the customer. Okay, so let me define the calendar at least for 1st January 25, right? Then the next piece is the period frequency. So Oracle has given some of the predefined period frequencies, right? In first place, what is period frequency? A period frequency is a subset of your calendar, right? What we discussed, the calendar is the subcomponents. Calendar has various subcomponents, number of subcomponents, as in the name of period, right? So financial year Jan to December has each month as its period, right? So again, what is a period? Right? A period is the uh, a business. Again, it is a business decision. What should be my period? So maybe it's monthly, weekly, quarterly, right? There would be 445 calendars, 454 calendars. So what does it mean is each enterprise is going to maintain its transactions for each period, and as and when the period gets completed, the books of accounts are going to be closed for that specific period, and the accounts balances are going to be reopened or pushed to the next period, right? So let's say for the April, right now we are in April, right? The April 1st, let's say there are some balances which my expense account is showing, travel expense account is showing, right? So the what is the balance that you see on 1st April is my opening balance, right? So what does that opening balance? It is the closing balance of your previous period, previous day, right? What is the previous day? Again, it's 31st March. 31st March is falls under which period, right? So that period we are going to be defined as part of your period frequency. Okay. So you are going to give a direction to the system saying that in the financial year Jan to December, right? What should be the period, and what should be the range of dates for that specific period? Okay. So what happens if I take monthly, right? So based on that period frequency, based on that range of period, Oracle has come up with a predefined solution with list of values. Okay. So maybe monthly calendar, right? Maybe a yearly calendar. This is the one of the, only one period. So what do you mean? I'm defining a calendar for 1 year. Obviously, it should be for 1 year, right? But what are my subset? What are the periods in it? How many number of periods that I can have? If we mention as yearly, obviously it is going to create one period for complete year, right? So if you see what is the impact, if you see, just select the period frequency as yearly and click on next, right? What the application has displayed, it has given from 1st Jan 25 to 31st December 25, which means in only one period your entire financials are going to be run. But where do you, how do you report your monthly reporting? How do you report your quarterly reporting? Unless until you close the period, unless until you finalize your accounting balance, you cannot run any reporting, right? At least the financials, right? So, so to so based on basically this period frequency is the reporting require. Again, it comes from the reporting requirement from the customer. Okay, so let's say I'm taking monthly as my period frequency. What does it mean is my financial year is going to be splitted by each month, which means I'll be having 12 months, and each of the 12 month is going to be represented by a month. And for each month, I'll be having, when I say it is the business. For business, there will be an date range will be defined for each of this month, so that the transaction can be booked with respect to the month and date, right? So let's see what happens if I select the monthly as the period frequency, and then we'll see the what is the impact, right? So what is this separator? There is a term called separator. Separator is basically to represent how your period name should be displayed on the application. So if you see here, it is by default, it is with the dash one, right? If you select the change, can you see first period, the name got changed, how it is just way of representation. That's it, nothing else, no significance it has in the application. How you want to see the period name in the application. Generally, we will go with December, right? And then you have format. What is the format again? Format, if you see here, if you open here, right, there are various options with month and year options. But if you see, there are two terms which are repeating: calendar year and fiscal year, right? What does a calendar year? What does a fiscal year? So calendar year is which starts from Jan and ends in December. This is your calendar year, and any calendar which starts in between and ends in the next year. Let's say if you take as an Indian calendar, it starts in the April of this month and this year, and it ends in the March of next year. This is how the financial year is defined, right? So what are the calendars which are similar to Indian calendar, or maybe whatever, maybe there may be some years, some countries, they might be following your October to September, right? So whatever. So in short, fiscal year is the calendar type where your calendar starts in middle of the one year and it ends in the subsequent year. And whereas calendar year is the calendar type where your calendar starts at the beginning of the year, it ends at the end of the year, which is Jan to December. Okay, so how do I? So I'm defining my monthly calendar from right from the Jan 1st to December 31st. What does it mean? My calendar is going to be an accounting calendar, right? So how do I represent my accounting calendar is, so if I take this one MMMYY calendar year, which means how does my name is going to be derived basically. So if you MMM, three characters are your period and followed by your separator and the last two digits of your financial year. This is how the period name is going to be derived by the application based on the parameters that you select again. Okay. Right. So again, there is a concept. If you move further, there is a concept called budgetary control. What does it mean is if you enable this checkbox, this calendar is only going to be used in the budgetary control, budgets upload. Okay. Then you have adjustment period. What is an adjustment period? This. Right. Again, what is an adjustment period? Basically, if any one of you are aware of the audit activity, right? So let's say I have selected based on the requirement from the customer. We have selected a monthly calendar for a customer, right? So what happens is, in that case, what happens? A calendar will be created right from Jan to December with 12 periods being the number of periods, right? So once the year end is done, let's say the business, the December is completed, December 31st is completed, and the next subsequent period has to be opened, right? So obviously, what the business will do, once in each period, when the business books its transaction, the period status should be open. Okay, there are period status controls. Only the open periods are allowed to post to your journals. Once the transactions are get booked and posted, then once the period is completed, let's say you are done with your January and the Feb 1st has come, or Feb 1st or 2nd, whatever, right? The transactions which got booked in the January has to be finalized has to be accounted, has to be posted the journals, and then business is going to that period and open the February period so that the transaction can be get booked in the February period, right? This is how the process that gets run in the regular routine business, right? So once the December period is closed, the Jan period of next year has to be open, right? This is this is 2025 and the Jan period 2026 has to be open, right? So once the Jan period is open, the financial transactions related to this previous year, company has to report its financials to its local authorities, right? Before it before it files its financials, the financials has to be audited by the auditor, right? Again, who is an auditor? A certified auditor, maybe is a chartered accountant, right? So what if, see, the December period is closed and it is not the case. I mean, the reporting, the legal authorities give some time bound for the each enterprise to file its audited financials with certain time limits. Let's say it is 3 months. Let's assume that it's within 3 months of the year financial closing. The audited financials has to be filed with the reporting authorities, right? So the audit activity is going to take place in Jan or Feb, right? In Feb, the auditor has identified there are some adjustment entries has to be done for the transactions related to previous financial year. How do I do that? Right? Because you have already closed the period December period, which is related to 2025, right? You cannot post any transactions to the closed period. That is the thumb rule from Oracle. Okay. So how do I do that? To facilitate that requirement, you have a concept called adjustment period. Okay. And this adjustment period, when you select this adjustment period, what happens? An additional period is going to be added to your accounting calendar. So this adjustment period, where do I add this calendar? Again, that's again a question. Fine, the application has given an feasibility to have defined adjustment period. That is fine, but where? Calendar Jan to December, you have your periods in the sequence, Jan, Feb, March till December. Where do you want to add this adjustment period? Again, Oracle also, for that also, it has given the options. Do you want to add the adjustment period at the year end, once at year end, right? Twice at year end, twice, which means two adjustment periods will be added at the year end, which means after the December period. Okay, December is your last period in the application. If you are if you have defined your accounting period from Jan to December, which is financial year, right? So accounting calendar in basically, right? If it is a fiscal calendar, whatever. If you take as an example, Indian calendar, April to March, after March, the adjustment period is going to be inserted. We will see that. Okay, but there are certain options. Maybe companies wants to each companies also files its quarterly reports, right? At each quarter, the audit is going to happen, right? If the auditor findings has to be recorded in an adjustment period only, then obviously you can even have an adjustment period for each quarter. Jan, Feb, March, and then adjustment period. April, May, June, and an adjustment period. And then rest it continues, right? Similarly, there is an option once at the beginning of the year, once at the end of the year, which means a period will be adjustment period will be added at the beginning and then your Jan to December calendar, followed by at the last an adjustment period at the year end. Likewise, there are options. If you do not want to have any adjustment period, then you even have that option, none. Okay, so if you select none, there would not be any adjustment period added to the calendar. Only the calendar that gets added based on your monthly frequency. Okay, so let's see what happens if I select a period frequency as monthly, and my start date is from Jan 1st, and the adjustment period is once at the year end. Just click on next. So if you see, application has defined the calendar with its start and end dates, right? This, did we give these dates? So the Jan starts from 1st and 31st March. Feb starts from 1st and it ends 28th. March starts from 1st and 31st, right? We haven't given these dates. Okay. How does these dates are derived? Based on the frequency and the start date which you have given. Okay. So this is an automation process that the Oracle has implemented only in Fusion Cloud Financials. And if you take the on-premise EBS, again the consultants has to define this date range manually, basically. Okay, so based on the selection, it has added 12 periods and an adjustment period at the year end. Can you see the last period? And it is even marked as an adjusting period, right? What does it mean is basically the adjustment period is going to be used for any adjustments that comes as part of the audit activity are going to be posted in this adjustment period. Okay, so if you see this calendar, right, the period numbers 1 to 12 and 13, right? And you can even see the quarter, this which period falls under which quarter, right? This information you can see, and you can even see the start and end dates of your period in which the transactions related to those dates has to be booked in that respective period. Okay, so this is about your calendar. So how do I save my calendar? Just I can save it. So what happens when I save? Application is going to perform certain validations. Okay, so if the user, let's say in this example, we have selected one of the period frequency. Let's say if the business requirement is it doesn't fit in any of the period frequency that Oracle gives, then you have an option to select other. And if you select the other as your period frequency, the start and end dates, you have to give it manually. Okay, in that case, wherever the user tries to punch in the data, there are probabilities of having data errors, right? Maybe the user has given the date as an overlap. Let's say, so here the user might have given 30, right? Maybe here the user might have given the start date as first, again a January, while punching in, right? If you click on save, application is going to does its validation whether the period is derived properly or not, whether the start dates and end dates are properly defined or not, or whether the dates are which are any of the period dates are overlapped or not. So the application is going to do certain validations, such kind of validations. And if any error it finds, it gives you an error message, basically. Right? Can you see? I've changed the date. You enter the standard periods with overlapping date ranges. It is giving an error message saying that there is an overlap in the date range that I have selected for periods. What is that overlap I have selected? For Jan, 1st Jan to 30th March, 30th Jan I have taken. Even for second period also, I have taken from 1st Jan to 28th Feb. That is what I have taken. That is the reason it is giving an error message for me. Right? So let me close it out. So once you are done with your calendar without any errors, it is going to be one of your calendar part, right? So I can query back my calendar and I can open my calendar. I can see what are the ranges that I can do. So what is the maintenance activity that you will be doing on your calendar in the real-time business world? Once you are on a project, maybe you are as an implementation as a support consultant, right? So what are the activities that you might be doing? So on a calendar, these period names are going to be freezed. I mean, this you cannot change once you open this calendar period. When you open the calendar period, this calendar is going to be tied to your primary ledger, right? So calendar is one of the component of your primary ledger. And once you tied that calendar to your primary ledger, and when you open the calendar period, then this gets into freeze mode. Okay. And there is an option called add year. What does it mean? Right? So let's say this calendar you have defined for 2025. After December 25, the transaction has to be booked in 26 financial year, right? How do I add that? Just you need to click on add year. What it is saying, the period number must be unique within a year. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. It is unique only. Period name and the period details are required. Okay, let me query back. So this is how you can add your.
I think already we are in 2025. We need to select 26. I think.
Yeah. We'll come to that. So we'll see that. So there are certain other options I'll showcase on that calendar as well. So what are the other options that you see on the calendar, right? I'll showcase on the year adding a new year as well. Not an issue, right? What are the other options you see on the calendar? Right? We have seen the monthly, right? We have other options as well. What does this 445 brings in? Right? Once you select the period frequency 445 and click on next, can you see the calendar is populated, financial year is populated with each of its period, and each of its period is populated with the certain date range. If you see the first period, it is got ended on Jan 28th itself, right? The second period is got ended on 25th of your Feb, and your third period got ended on your 1st of April. How come this calculation has come is 445? What does it mean is 4 weeks, 4 weeks, and 5 weeks. First period will be 4 weeks. 4 weeks is my Jan 28, which ends on Jan 28th, right? And the next period would be on the next 4 weeks. So from Jan 28th to 25th will be the period which falls under next 4 weeks, and from Feb 26th to April 1st, if we calculate this range, this will become 5 weeks. 445, this calendar, what you call, is generally used in certain manufacturing industry companies. Okay, they do use this 445 calendar. Okay, even that is also being added as one of the period frequency as a predefined solution in the Oracle application, right? So what is the change here? Just the from and to dates got changed, and also the rest of the period numbers are remain same. Each quarter is going to be defined with 3 periods, but the what is the main difference is your start date and end dates are going to be different from your monthly calendar. Monthly calendar, it starts on first and ends on the last day of month, whereas 4/4 calendar, it starts and ends for 4 week range, and the followed by next month also for four periods, and the third month is for third period is for 5 weeks. Okay, then I have other options as well here. 454. If you see this, the Feb date is going to be changed. Feb period is second period is going to be 5 weeks for 5 weeks. In each quarter, the second period is going to be 5 periods. For first period is going to be for 4 weeks, second period is going to be for 5 weeks, and then 4 weeks. Again, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 4 weeks. You can see that. Can you see? Okay, so likewise, you can use the period frequency that Oracle gives you. But what if my company have a different period frequency? It is not monthly, not quarterly, not yearly, not 445. Let's say they want to have bi-weekly. Let's say for each 2 weeks, I should have a period defined for my calendar. Business wants to close its period once in for 2 weeks. What do you do? Do you have any placeholder in this one? Right? You don't have anything ready-madely available, but there is an option called other. If you select this other, then certain options are got disappeared and the additional feature number of periods got enabled. So if it is an other, it is the consultant who has to tell to the system in this financial year, the business wants to run the financial year in these many number of periods, right? So bi-weekly, how many would come to it? It comes to 26, right? So 26 number of periods, I want to create it, and I want an adjustment period at the end. Just click on this and click on next. What happens? If you see 26 plus 1, 27 periods are added by the application. But do you see the start and end dates are given in the application? No. Why? Because the period frequency is the other which you have selected. What does it mean? Oracle has built an application to automate to some extent with the major period frequencies that get implemented in the general business. With those period frequencies, it is already automated by the Oracle itself in the product. But if the business wishes to have a different period frequency, then still you can go and use the application, but it is you have to configure this application. Okay, what I need to do? I need to give these dates, right? If it is, since it is an right, since it is an weekly 2 weeks a period, I am going to define, right? So my first period should get end on 14th of January, and the second period should open on 15th of January. Like, so it should get end on 28th, right? So while performing these activities, consultant may intentionally or unintentionally, right? They might miss something. Those errors get tracked in your calendar validation process, right? When does that calendar validation happens? When you click on saving the created calendar, it does some validations in the backend, whether the date range falls under the frequency that you have selected, or are there any date range overlaps, whether the period name is properly defined or not, right? Those are the certain validation that the application is going to do, right? So the final thing on the calendar is it was not allowing to add the year, right? An application occurs see the there is some error it seems. Let me create a calendar again.
On the suggesting period frequency, do we have the monthly as well?
You can. Once at the beginning of the year, mid-year, you have a mid-year and at the year-end option. Once mid-year and twice at year-end. There are certain options. Once at year-end, twice at year-end, none other quarterly. You have the quarterly. If you have to give monthly, then you have to go with the option called other. Then you have to give the option. Okay. So what is this user predefined? Yeah, sorry. Go ahead.
If you give monthly or quarterly, how many times it will be allowed to do the changes?
Changes, when you say changes, what are those?
Suppose, for example, March already closed. Today is the 22nd April, right? And customers say that I want to do any adjusting entry in the month of January or maybe March. So I have done one adjusting entry in the month of Jan. So again, customer come back and say that I want to do one more entry in the month of January.
Let me explain here. As I said, once the period is closed, permanently closed, you cannot open the period. That's the thumb rule Oracle. Okay. See, there are various period statuses. We will discuss in the when we reach to that point. But when there are period status closed and permanently closed, when you make it permanent closed, once the audit is done, then you will be permanently closing. But when the period is closed, when you try to reopen, what happens is the balances gets rolled back. So what we suggest is you do not open the period. That is why Oracle has come with a concept called adjustment period. For Jan to March for first quarter, if you want to have an adjustment period, you can have an adjustment period for each quarter. After March, it is going to insert one period, right? That period, even for that additional period, whatever is being added between March and April, right? In that period also, you can book the transactions. Okay, what transactions that you book? The adjustment entries that you're supposed to book for the which are belongs to the previous period, previous quarter. Okay, you cannot in April, you cannot go and book the transaction in the January. It is not advisable. First place, once the period is closed, system itself will not allow you. It throws you an error saying that period is not open. Okay. How you can do? You can open the period, but it is best advice is you should not open the period. It creates a lot of issues. To avoid that, you have an adjustment period. Even by going into the adjustment period also, you can easily identify what are the adjustments that I posted. Okay. Did I answer your question?
Okay.
Yeah. So there is a concept called user predefined prefix. What it will do is if you add a prefix, the prefix is going to be added to your name. As and when I added TR, can you see it is added? Okay. If company wishes to have some prefix, maybe its names or something, then you can add you can use that one as well. But generally we will not be using that one. Okay. So I'm defining a calendar, right? Can you see 26 is being added here? If you see here, let's say, can you see initially it was 25. So I have added for 26 and you can see the 26 calendar as well, right? Where was that? I haven't saved. Can you see the calendar for 26 is also being added in the calendar as and when I click on the add here. This is how you add the next financial year in any of the calendar. Okay, so this is about calendar. And then what do you have? What do you on the card? What do you have on the card is the currency, right? So manage currency is the task which you can use, right?